Welcome to the chaos this week on the Price Podcast, your no holds bar, deep dive breakdown of the stories shaking our world right now. I'm your host, Jonathon Pryce, coming at you from Loganville, Georgia. And this week, chaos doesn't even begin to cover it. We're talking about a raging war with downed American jets, a president firing his own attorney general mid conflict. Excited about that. Gas prices exploding past $4 a gallon, a historic moon mission blasting off while Earth burns with tension, massive budget battles, and the ripple effects that could reshape economic alliances in everyday life for years. We'll explore every angle: the military realities, the political fallout, the human cost of the human the human cost, the economic shocks, the legal questions, and the what ifs that keep strategists up at night. No sugarcoating, no spin, just thorough analysis with context, examples, nuances, and the implications. Strap in. This is going to be a wild ride through 7 days of pure chaos. Let's dive right in. Now, the dominant story this week, as we can all tell, is the US Israel Iran war, now deep into its sixth week, however you're counting it. And it's accelerating in terrifying ways. Over the past 7 days, we've seen US and Israeli strikes intensify on Iranian infrastructure. But bridges near Tehran hit hard, killing civilians and wounding dozens. Refineries and steel plants targeted, even damage to sites like major university in Tehran and the old US embassy compound turned museum. Iran has retaliated with missile and drone barrages hitting Israel, causing fires and injuries, plus strikes on Gulf targets, a fuel storage fire at Kuwait's airport, an oil tanker hit off Qatar, and shrapnel incidents in the UAE. But the biggest escalation: two US fighter jets shot down over Iran. The first successful downing of manned American aircraft in this conflict. Search and rescue missions have been launched immediately. One crew member rescued, but others remain missing or accounted for. With search efforts entering a second day amid high risks, this marks a dramatic shift. American losses on the ground, or rather in the air, raising questions about Iranian air defenses holding up better than some predicted, despite the weeks of pounding. And it has been weeks. President Trump addressed the nation in a prime time speech, calling operations nearing completion, sorry, and suggested it could wrap up in 2 to 3 weeks. But he also warned of much more to follow if no deal emerges, threatening to hit high energy infrastructure hard and giving Iranian deadlines a mm, giving them deadlines on reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Mixed singles, mixed mixed signals everywhere. One moment, Iranian deadlines are on reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Sorry, one moment's opportunistic. The next, vowing to bomb them back if shipping doesn't flow freely. Meanwhile, over 50,000 US troops are now in the region, including fresh Marine expeditionary forces. Let's unpack the layers here. Contextually, This stems from earlier targeted actions against Iranian leadership and nuclear sites, with assassinations and strikes that Iran frames as existential threats. Nuances abound. Civilian casualties are mounting. Bridges aren't just bridges aren't just infrastructure. They're lifelines for medical aid, food, and daily movement. Humanitarian groups and UN voices are raising alarms about disproportionate impacts on non-combatants, ghost towns in Tehran, and broader displacement. From a military angle, Iran's remaining missile and drone cap- capabilities, oh my gosh, estimates say half their launches and thousands of one-way drones still intact. This means they could still wreak havoc across the region, even as their navy takes hits and production facilities suffer. Retaliatory strikes have spilled into Lebanon with Israeli actions against Hezbollah, Houthi involved with from Yemen, and distributions and shipping that Iran shows no sign of fully relinquishing control over, even proposing joint monitoring with Oman. Don't forget to drink your water, guys. Implications are massive and intersected. Economically, the Strait of Hormuz crisis has oil and gas flows throttled, pushing U.S. gas prices over $4 nationally, higher in some spots, and spiking global energy costs. Developing nations in Africa and South Asia reliant on these imports for fuel, food production via fertilizer, and shipping face crunching shortages that could spark hunger cries or instability. Here at home, inflation fears are rising, with analysis warning headline numbers could hit near 4% soon, squeezing households already feeling the pinch. The edge case to consider. What if the missing pilots are captured? That gives Iran leverage in any negotiations. A prolonged group component, public support in the US seems mixed at best, especially with American casualties. Legal debates rage. Is this war fully authorized under US and international law? Or blatantly illegal? As some experts argue, broader ripples include strains on NATO, distractions from Ukraine for where Russia claims advances in Luhansk, and environmental fallout from targeted energy sites. Diplomatically, talks continue without direct US Iran involvement in some forms, with countries like the UK, Pakistan, Turkey, and others pushing for de escalation. Trump's 48-hour style ultimatums add pressure but risk miscalculation. If it winds down quickly, markets could stabilize. If this drags out or widens to full regional war, we're looking at supply chain chaos, higher defense costs, and political backlash heading into the midterms. We're already facing a lot this midterm. There's a lot going on. Not a lot of not happy people. This isn't just Middle East news. It's a global stress test on energy security, alliances, and leadership. Now, shifting gears to the home front, because the chaos we're seeing overseas isn't somewhere quantitated from American soil. In fact, the turbulence abroad is amplifying and accelerating the divisions and power plays right here at home. Let's start with one of the biggest political shakeups of the week: President Trump firing Attorney General Pam Bondi. Now, before I continue, I will say this one is we we we've seen it. We've seen this happen. We've seen this happen. Okay, Pam Bondi has not done the greatest job. Especially with Epstein files and the communication in her and the department. Like it's been terrible. A lot of people don't like it. Like I said, especially with the Epstein files. A lot of people don't like that. So a lot of people are celebrating, especially on the right. Hey, so am I. I mean, I did not like her. She no. So kind of glad that that's happening. We can finally get somebody in there who can do the job. Hopefully, it won't be worse. Hopefully, we praying, right? But on Thursday, Trump announced via Truth Social that Bondi was out after after a tumultuous 14-month tenure, praising her service while saying she would be transitioning to a much needed and important new job in the private sector. He taped Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche to step in as acting AG for now, with some whispers in administration circles about potential permanent replacements like Lee Zeldin. This marks the second major cabinet level ousting in recent weeks, and it didn't come out of nowhere. Reports across outlets detail mounting frustrations. Bondi's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files had become a significant political liability, with critics inside and outside the administration accusing her of dragging her feet and or not delivering the transparency and prosecutions some people expected. There were also complaints about the pace and er, limited success in pursuing cases against Trump's perceived political enemies, alongside broader questions of loyalty and communication effectiveness. Bondi had reshaped the Justice Department in ways that aligned with the president's priorities, turning it into a more aggressive tool for addressing grievances. But apparently, that wasn't enough to satisfy the boss this time. Oh. Sorry. This firing raises profound and layered questions about the independence of the Department of Justice versus direct executive expectations in a deeply polarized climate. Historically, attorney generals have walked a tightrope between serving the president, who appoints them, and upholding the rule of the law as a somewhat insulated institution. In this case, this move fuels debates. Is this healthy accountability for underperformance? Or does it erode public trust by signaling that the nation's top law enforcement role must prioritize personal and political loyalty above all? In a time of active war, with Americans' jets downed and troops deployed, having stability, or at least perceived competence, at the DOJ becomes even more crucial for overseeing political war investigations, domestic security threats tied to the conflict, or even espionage cases that could emerge from the Iran theater. The nuance here is that while every administration expects alignment, rapid firings like this can create a chilling effect on career prosecutors and staff, leading to turnover, moral dips, and accusations of politicization that courts and Congress might later scrutinize. Scrutinize, sorry. At the same time, the White House rolled out a blockbuster budget proposal for financial year 2027, A record shattering $1.7 trillion request for the Pentagon. That's a massive jump, roughly 40 to 44% higher than the current levels, depending on how you slice the baseline, making it the largest defense budget in modern U.S. history. The proposal funds ongoing war efforts in the Middle East, new naval ships, expanding munitions production, pay raises for troops, and high profile initiatives like the Golden Dome missile defense system, plus investments in next generation fighters like more F 35s and even concepts for a sixth generation F 47. This also includes significant resources to broader security and law enforcement enhancements, with over $19 billion earned there, a 15% bump. To offset the urge, the plan calls for about $73 billion in cuts to non-defense discretionary discretionary. Yep, said it right. Discretionary. If I did not say that wrong, let me know in the comments. Anywho, discretionary spending, targeting areas like renewables and environmental programs, education initiatives, house assistance, and health research by around 10% overall. Some agencies, including parts of Health and Human Resources, the EPA, and labor programs, could face even steeper squeezes. Congress is gearing up for fierce battles over this. Republicans may push hard for the defense side using the reconciliation tactics to bias filibusters, while Democrats and moderate voices will fight to protect domestic priorities. Even amid a lingering potential government shutdown focused on Homeland Security funding, TSA workers finally started seeing back pay for this week after weeks of delays, with Trump directing emergency measures to cover retroactive compensation using available funds. Airport delays have piled up, highlighting the real human cost of these funding standoffs. Thousands of federal workers and travelers have been affected and will continue to be until all of this is arranged. The budget isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It signals crystal clear priorities: defense and national security first, especially with over 50,000 U.S. troops now in the region and the Iran conflict demanding resources for everything from air operations to potential escalations in the Strait of Hormuz. But the nuances are critical. Boosting the defense industrial base could create or sustain jobs in manufacturing hubs across states like Georgia, my very own state. Supporting morale during wartime and preparing for longer term threats from adversaries like China or Russia. On the flip side, slashing investments in green energy, education, and health research risk slowing innovation in critical fields. Think delayed breakthroughs in clean energy at a time when energy prices are already spiking due to Gulf distributions, or reduced funding for medical research that could impact health resilience. Financial implications loom large. Ballooning deficits from such a defense heavy approach could crowd out future spending, raise borrowing costs, or force tough choices later on, potentially exuberating inequality if domestic safety nets weaken while certain sectors thrive. Other domestic moves this week added more fuel to the fire. Trump signed on an executive order directing the creation of the National Voter List, or more precisely, state citizenship lists compiled from federal databases like DHS, Social Security, and naturalization records. The order aims to verify eligibility for federal elections, restrict certain mail in voting practices, and ensure only citizens above voting age appear on these lists, with updates transmitted to states ahead of midterms. Supporters frame it as essential for election integrity and preventing fraud. I'm support of that. Critics immediately threatened lawsuits, arguing it could suppress turnouts, create bureaucratic huddles for legitimate voters, and overstep federal authority into state run elections. This ties directly into broader debates over access versus security in a polarized democracy. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments on April 1st, April Fool's Day, in the high stakes challenge to Trump's executive order attempting to limit birthright citizenship, denying automatic citizenship to children born in the U.S. to undocumented parents or those on temporary visas, which um, sh- should be common sense. If you're not, if you're not a legal citizen here in the United States, why should your kid be able to become a U.S. citizen because they were born here, but then you take them back to your country? I'm gonna give you guys my whole thing about this, right? So kind of to correct the birthright citizenship, right? Because just to let you guys know, I'm a birthright citizen. I'm a birthright kid. Okay, but the only thing is, my parents stayed and became legal. Or yeah, my parents stayed, became legal. So yes, we're all legal citizens. Now, um, here's my 2 cents on this. Here's what I think should happen to limit birthright citizenship. Um, okay, say they come here, they give birth, right? For them to become a U.S. citizen, their parents, if if they are born here, and if they want their kids to have a U.S. citizenship, their parents should stay here for 20 years. They have to stay here for 20 years. Now, during that time, you could have the full rights of what it means to be a U.S. citizen. But you have to stay here for 20 years, take the naturalization test. Actually, that should be the first thing you do. Take the naturalization test where they go out. Well, first off, you need to learn how to speak English. Second of all, there is a certain speech. Let me see if I can pull it up. There's a certain speech that they have you say. Let me ask Grok, because trying to find it. Oh, I might be able to find it. I might be able to find it. Hold on. Naturalize. Let's see. I think this might be it. Yes. The Naturalization Oath of Intelligence to the United States of America. So, so this is what it should say. Let me see if I could pull this up for you guys. Let this go out. So, here's my 2 cents, all right? If for kids, if you want your kid to be born here, be a U.S. citizen, you have to take this oath. And it says, I hereby declare on oath that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, penitent, I guess that's how you say it, states or sovereignty of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or citizen, that I will support and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will bear arms on behalf of the United States when required by law, that I will perform non-combatant service in the armed services of the United States when required by law, that I will perform work of national importance under civilian direction when required by the law, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. So they need to say this whole thing right here, right? Whole thing. Get this highlighted. So they need to say this whole thing right here. Oh, this whole thing. So with that, they had to completely renounce their citizenship to wherever they're coming from, right? Say this oath to be a national citizen, live here for 20 years. Now, within that 20-year period, you can most definitely, you know, I would say like green card status, basically, right? Permanent resident status, I guess you call it. So that's what I would say. And then there's one more thing I thought of. Man, I need to write that down. I need to write that down. So, like I said, for your kid to be born here and be a U.S. citizen, the parents themselves must take this oath, um, denaturalize from the country that they're coming from, that they came from, live here for the next 20 years, and if they move to another state or if they change their primary residence to another country, they immediately lose out on this offer and they take their entire family, including their kids, back to their home country. Now that I think about it, hold on. Yeah, yeah. Let's just say that for now, and then later on we could fix that. You guys let me know down in the comments what you guys think about it. But yes, 20 years. Live here. Obviously, they could have everything. They will have to follow the law of the United States, and if they are called to, if they have to be drafted, you're gonna go to the army. Well, actually, I would say not in the first 5 years. No, not no 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 army. Work in the private sector. And then afterwards, once you start living here and get the custom, then they can start be drafted and stuff and work in the army. But yes, that's at least what I think should happen. You need to live here for 20 years, renounce your old country, your country of origin, if you want your kid to have citizenship here. If you want your kid to be born on this soil and to be a U.S. citizen, parents have to do that. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Let me know. Anyway, the case Trump versus Barbara tests the 14th Amendment citizenship clause and league long-standing precedent from the One King arc. Justices appeared skeptical of the administration's narrow interpretation based on allegiance and domicile, with some conservative voices pushing back on the legal quirks. Every lower court had blocked the order, and a final ruling expected by June or July could reshape immigration law, family structures, and demographic realities for generations. Separately, judicial blocks hit efforts to restrict race conditions in college administrations, while quieter shifts in immigration enforcement continue, emphasizing interior priorities without the massive public skepticals of earlier surges. And let's not overlook the public reaction. Massive No King protests erupted across the country, one of the largest single day series of actions against the administration, with estimates in the millions participating in thousands of events from big cities to small towns. Organizers rallied against the Iran war, immigration crackdowns, rising living costs tied to energy shocks, and what they describe as executive overreach. These demonstrations, the third iteration, drew diverse crowds chanting against tyranny and for people power, echoing historical protest movements while highlighting current flashpoints like gas prices over $4 and shut down hardships. Exploring all these angles thoroughly. Politically, they paint a picture of an assertive, sorry, assertive second term agenda, laser focus on security, election safeguards, immigration control, and rolling back policies critics labeled as woke or inefficient. And now that last part, oh, I'm 100% for. 100% for. Destroy woke. Eradicate it. Like it needs to have a Hakai. Okay? It needs to face a Hakai blast and be um exterminated from existence, even in the afterlife. Like it no, like once like dead, gone, destroyed, and there is no chance of it coming back. That's what we need. Woke BS goodbye. Yet they encounter significant institutional pushback from courts questioning constitutional boundaries to lawmakers battling over budgets to street level protests signaling public discontent. The nuances include trade offs that aren't zero sum. Wartime needs justify defense hikes, but shortchanging domestic programs that could hinder long term competitiveness in tech, health, and stability. Examples abound. Communities near military bases might see economic boosts from troop pay and contracts, while families reliant on housing aid or student loans feel the pinch elsewhere. Implications for everyday Americans cut across class and region. Higher defense spending most indirectly support jobs in aerospace, shipbuilding, or logistics sectors, providing stability amid uncertainty. But the war's energy driven inflation is hammering household budgets nationwide. Higher fuel costs ripple into groceries, trucking, and commuting, hitting rural and working class areas especially hard. The voter list initiative sparks heated access versus fraud debates. Proponents point to past irregularities as justification, while opponents warn of disenfranchisement risk for elderly, minority, or low income voters facing documentation hurdles. On birthright citizenship, a ruling against the administration would preserve the status quo for millions of families. An upset could create statelessness issues, legal limbo for children, and international human rights concerns. Edge cases deserve attention too. If courts strike down key elements like the voter list or citizenship limits, it could set new precedents strengthening congressional or state authority, or alternatively provoke further executive workarounds. If the budget passes largely intact via reconciliation, it entrenches military priorities for years, potentially locking in higher baseline spending even after the Iran conflict winds down. What if prolonged shutdowns or protest escalations lead to broader labor unrest or midterm backlash? Broader context ties everything back to the war. Funding needs for troop deployments and operations explain the defense surge, but at what long term cost to social programs, economic resilience, or social cohesion? Foreign chaos clearly amplifies eternal divisions, energy shocks from the Gulf fuel inflation debates, while war rhetoric sharpens partisan lines on loyalty, justice, and governance. This week's domestic turbulence underscores a core truth. In an interconnected world, overseas conflicts don't just cost lives and treasure abroad, they reshape priorities, test institutions, and expose fault lines at home in ways that could define the rest of this term and beyond. The balance between decisive leadership and checks and balances, stability while being watched closely by allies, adversaries, and everyday citizens alike. Amid all this earthbound turmoil, a moment of inspiration, NASA's Artemis 2 mission launched successfully on April Fool's, sending four astronauts: Commander Reed Wiseman, pilot Victor Glover, mission specialist Christina Koch, Coach, and Canadian Space Agency astronauts Jeremy Hansen on the first crewed lunar flyby in over 50 years since Apollo 17. The massive Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft, dubbed Integrity, I like that name, performed flawless performed flawlessly during liftoff from Kennedy Space Center's Launch Complex 39B at 6:35 p.m. EDT. While the crew now well into roughly a 10-day journey, they're currently hurtling through deep space, having completed the crucial translunar interjection burn, sharing breathtaking views of Earth from over 150,000 miles away, conducting system tests, and preparing for their close lunar flyby on April 6th, 2 days from now, which would be Monday. That will take them around the far side of the moon, areas never directly witnessed by human eyes in real time, before splashing down back in the Pacific. Now, what do you guys think is on the other side of the moon? Because I read the manga and I saw the anime. Dr. Stone, do you think Who Man exists? And do you think that they will one day rain down themselves and come to Earth and just turn everybody to stone? What do you guys think? Is that a possibility, or just eh? Let me know. Let me know down in the comments. Obviously, I'm just messing with y'all. I like to have some fun. Look, Doctor Stone is a really good anime, and the final season of it is coming out. I'm excited for it. Like I said, I've read it all already, so I know what's gonna happen. But it's some good stuff that's gonna come. I'm telling you, some good stuff that's coming. If you don't watch anime, you are sincerely missing out. At least watch Doctor Stone. That's something that you could watch. Okay. Contextually, this revives America's deep space ambitions in a big way, building directly on the uncrewed Artemis 1 success while marking historic first. Cover as the first black astronaut to venture toward the moon, Koch as the first woman on such a mission, and Hansen as the first non American. This crew live interviews and transmissions highlight the realities of capsule life. From the excitement of weightlessness and family calls to the profound isolation and the gravity of realizing they're among the farthest humans have ever traveled, potentially breaking the Apollo 13 distance record. Nuances abound. This achievement unfolds against a complex backdrop of budget debates. Just days after the triumphant launch, the Trump administration released its FY 2027 NASA budget proposal, calling for a steep 23% overhaul cut to the agency, down to about 18.8 billion, while still directing 8.5 billion toward Artemis priorities like commercial lunar landers, spacesuits, rovers, habitats, and transportation systems aimed at landing humans on the moon by the end of the term, and eventually establishing a lunar base. Other science programs faced deeper reductions, including potential cancellation of dozens of missions. In sorry, installating. Sorry, whoa, why can't I speak? Oh my gosh, what? Whew, let me try this again. You know what? Water. Guys, Waterworks. Illustrating. Let's go. Illustrating a clear refocus on human exploration over broader research. Technical risk in deep space remain very real, from radiation exposure and life support challenges to the recent minor urine vent issue that the crew quickly resolved using contingency measures, reminding us that even flawless launches carry inherent uncertainties in this unforgiving environment. Implications are profound and multifaceted. On one level, Artemis 2 delivers a powerful boost to STEM inspiration for a new generation, showcasing diverse role models and reigniting wonder about humanity's place in the cosmos at a time when headlines are dominated by conflict and division. It fosters meaningful international cooperation, exemplified by Canada's integral role and the potential for expanded partnerships in future lunar infrastructure. Symbolically, it stands as a beacon of resilience, human integrity, and achieving persisting and advancing, seen even as geopolitics rage with war, down jets, and economic strain below. Yet, we must examine the nuances critically. While the budget priorities accelerated moon landings and base development, slashing non exploration science could slow progress in Earth observation, climate monitoring, and astrophysics that indirectly support long term space stability and global problem solving. From a, t- from a strategic angle, this mission layers in a competitive urgency, with China advancing its own lunar ambitions, including crewed landings and potential resource claims. Artemis 2 isn't just scientific, it's a statement of U.S. leadership in the emerging space war where technological superiority could translate into economic, military, and diplomatic advantages for decades. Edge cases warrant careful consideration. Severe funding shortfalls or congressional battles over the pro sorry, over the proposed cuts could delay follow-on missions like the Earth orbit test for Artemis 3 hardware or actual landings targeted for 2028, risking momentum loss or forcing heavier reliance on commercial partners with their own timelines and priorities. Competition may spur innovation through rivalry, but it could also escalate into wasteful duplication or heightened tensions if lunar resources become contested. Related, related lighter notes from the week: Easter weather tracking across the US. Families gathering despite high gas prices and cultural movements of reflection remind us that exploration offers a counter narrative of hope and unity amid uncertainty. In a week defined by destruction, division, and debate over defense trillions versus domestic needs, the fight represent or the flight represents construction of knowledge, of futures, and of a shared human aspiration that transcends earthly conflicts. It invites us to ponder bigger questions. How do we balance immediate survival imperatives like energy security and wartime funding with visionary investments that could expand our horizons? Can moments like these, help bridge the internal divisions amplifying amplified by foreign chaos? Let me say that again because I messed up. Can moments like these help bridge the internal divisions amplified by foreign chaos? Or will fiscal trade offs only sharpen them further? Ultimately, Artemis 2 underscores that even in chaos, humanity retains the capability to look upward, test its limits, and build towards something enduring. That is humanity, if you have not known. And it's awesome. Zooming out, the economic picture ties it all together. US jobs rebounded with 178,000 jobs added in March, marking the largest gain in 15 months and blowing past many expectations, while the unemployment rate edged down to 4.3%. On the surface, the signals resilience in the labor market with private sector gains particularly strong in certain areas. Yet the headline numbers mask nuances. Much of the unemployment drop stemmed from hundreds of thousands of people exiting the labor force altogether after unsuccessful job searches, and the average work week shortened slightly, hinting at underlying softness amid wartime uncertainties. Gas prices have surged past $4 per gallon nationally, up more than 30% since the conflict intensified, with diesel climbing even higher. It's above $5, even where I'm at. Where I am at, the cheapest I've seen was 3.59. The cheapest diesel was like $5. There's nowhere, even the rural area that I live in, diesel is at $5 a gallon. That means in Atlanta it is much more expensive. Could be 650. I don't know. And honestly, that's very scary. To think about. That's why I don't live in Atlanta. Anywho, driving oil volatility and disrupting shipping routes through the Straits of Hormuz. These shocks threaten global supply chains for everything from fertilizers to consumer jobs, endangering food security and compounding cries for vulnerable nations in Africa, South Asia, and beyond that rely heavily on imported energy and staples. Other notes from this chaotic week include severe weather threats looming ahead of Easter gatherings, local tragedies such as a stabbing incident in Florida that captured national attention, international incidents like kidnapping of a journalist in Baghdad amid regional instability, and crucial moments such as Pope Leo's Holy Week activities offering messages of peace and reflection. On a lighter but still headline grabbing note, golf legend Tiger Woods faces a DUI charge following a car crash, adding another unpredictable twist to the week's wild mix of events. Nuances and implications run deep here. War driven inflation fueled by energy costs could heavily influence upcoming Federal Reserve decisions, implicating the outlook for interest rates as policymakers weigh sticky price pressures against any signs of economic slowdown. Intersections with politics, sorry, try to go up. Mm. Anyway, intersections with politics are especially sharp. Midterm impacts could intensify the war if continues to sour public mood or if the economy falters further. With affordability issues like higher fuel and grocery bills becoming potent campaign flashpoints that test voter tolerance for prolonged foreign engagements, edge cases include scenarios of rapid de escalation and straight reopenings that quickly stabilize markets and ease pressures versus sustained escalation that deepens recessions, triggers humanitarian disasters in import dependent regions, or even tips the United States toward stagflation like conditions where growth stalls while prices rise. Related considerations show tech and AI advancements marching steadily forward in the background, potentially offering long term productivity offsets. But geopolitics consumes or continues to dominate headlines and resource allocation. Long term, this week starkly underscores how interconnected our world has become. One region's conflict sends immediate ripples to gas pumps and grocery aisles here at home, influences the feuding debates or ambitions ambitious state programs like Artemis, and echoes in voting booths as citizens weigh security gains against everyday economic pain. Delving even further into these economic threads reveals a complex tension between surface level strength and deeper fragilities that could define the months ahead. While the March jobs rebound provides a buffer and supports military related sectors through defense, sending spending, or sorry, through defense spending surges, the labor force participation drop signals disencouragement or barriers that might worsen if energy driven costs continue squeezing households. Higher commuting expenses, elevated utility bills, and pass through increases in food and goods prices erode disposable income, dampen customer confidence, and slow discretionary spending in retail, travel, and services. The Fed now faces a delicate balancing act. Reject projections still eye a potential rate cut later in 2026, but the oil shock from the disrupted Gulf supplies have already pushed inflation forecast higher, raising risk of delayed easing or even policy tightening if second round effects take hold in wages or expectations. For everyday Americans, this translates to tangible trade offs. Defense industry workers or communities near bases might see indirect benefits from the budget priorities, yet families in rural or lower income areas feel the pinch hardest at the pump and checkout line, potentially widening regional or socioeconomic divides. Globally, emerging markets grapple with currency pressures and import bills, while here the political calculus sharpens. If inflation lingers or growth cools heading into the midterms, it could amplify calls for accountability on war management and fiscal choices, turning economic resilience into a contested narrative rather than a straightforward win. In essence, this week's data and distributions highlight a true economic health isn't measured solely by payroll gains or unemployment ticks. It's tested by how well systems absorb shocks from distant conflicts, adapt through innovation, and maintain public trust when personal finances intersect with grand strategic goals. Now, that has been the chaos unpacked from this week on the Price podcast. The Iran wars, human and economic toll, domestic shakeups, testing institutions, a lunar leap forward, and connecting from threads connecting them all, from energy prices to future predicaments. We've covered context, multiple angles, nuances like civilian impact versus strategic goals, implications for inflation and alliances, edge cases from captures to report from court rulings, and broader consideration for stability and innovation. This chaos tests us, but cleared-eyed analysis helps navigate it. By breaking down the layers, the military, eh, uh, by breaking down the layers, the military escalations, the domestic power shifts, the lunar leap forward, and the economic ripples, we gain the perspective needed to see not just what happened this week, but why it matters and what might come next. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive on the Price Podcast. If today's thorough explanation of the Iran conflict, the Attorney General shakeup, the record Pentagon budget battles, the Artemis 2 mission, and the broader economic potential intersections sparked new questions for or connections for you. I want to hear from you offline. Head over to prycepodcast.live or my socials and drop your thoughts so you can see them up top. Go to on my ex Jonathon Pryce 1. I'll be seeing them there. Drop your thoughts, counterpoints, or the angles we might have missed. Whether it's how the war's energy shocks are hitting your local gas prices, your take on birthright citizen arguments. I've already given you mine. Let me know what you guys think on Jonathon Pryce 1 on X. Or what the Artemis launch means for America's future amid this turmoil. Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. And share this one with your friends or family who need a clear, no spin breakdown of the week's chaos. Your support keeps these deep dives coming. Every like, share, and comment helps us cut through the noise and deliver the context, nuances, and implications that actually matter. Stay informed, stay resilient, and remember, in a world this interconnected, understanding the threads between a down jet over Iran and your grocery bill isn't just informative, it's essential. Until then, this has been the chaos this week. Good night. Thank you all for being here. I'll catch you guys Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Culture Clash. I'll see you guys there. Peace.